Hi there, welcome back to another Fantasy Tour de France video. Today I'm going to be talking briefly about strategy for the last two stages of this year's tour, stage 20 tomorrow and the final stage 21 on Sunday. So first things first, let's look at some withdrawals since the last video I put out. So there have been a handful of withdrawals. Some of the most impactful ones are, of course, Remco Evenepoel withdrawing on stage 14. That was unfortunate for people like me who had him on their team. Also, Skelmos dropped out that day, and Brian Coquard didn't start. So, for anyone who still has Alexis Renard left, maybe it's good that he'll have a little bit more freedom to sprint with Coquard gone. Van Aertvelt didn't start stage 15, but he wasn't really doing much in this tour anyways. Much more impactful, however, was Mathieu van der Poel out for stage 16. So he certainly would have been one of the top riders to be looking at in these last two stages, but with him out, it's a little bit more open. Danny Van Poppel left on stage 17, and that is a little bit of a bummer for anyone who has Jordi Mayos on their team, as he lost his excellent sprint out man, Danny Van Poppel. Also, some tier 2, 3-ish GC riders. Carlos Rodriguez didn't start today, and Enric Mas didn't finish today. If we look over at the fantasy points that have been scored to date from stages 1 to 19, the distribution is pretty much where you'd expect it, with most of the points being with the big guys at the top, Tade and Jonas. Ben Healy, who's been super active and super successful, is up there as well. He's the highest non-leader. But you'll note that most of the points are actually being earned by riders classified as leaders, with a few stage hunters and climbers having opportunities to score more points than they would have otherwise, with Tadej Pogacar not really going for the win these last few mountain stages. But notably, there's very few sprinters that are high up in the overall point earners list, and that's before we even look at points per cost, and these sprinters are quite expensive. Noteworthy that Thymen Arensman's rapidly climbing up this list with two stage wins, including today. And Jonas Abrahamsen still plugging away, still a very excellent rider. He's actually sixth most efficient on points per star right now. And I think we can expect more from him tomorrow and possibly the last day. If we instead look at jersey points only, and here it's most relevant just to look at today's jersey points, because that's pretty close to what we can expect going forward, you'll see that Tade and Jonas are pretty high up above the rest, but the next tier is clearly 3 and 4 in the general classification, Florian Lipowitz and Oscar Onley. Interestingly, Onley is actually earning more points every day than Florian Lipowitz because of his standings in the green and polka dot jerseys, outweighing the better points that Florian's getting from the yellow and white jerseys. So these guys are pretty close, and it is very important that Florian Lipowitz costs 2 stars more than Oscar Onley, because if you have an excess of trades and you just need to free up some stars, you can pretty safely swap out Florian Lipowitz for Oscar Onley to earn 2 extra stars. And that's, spoiler alert, what I'm strongly considering doing today to free up some extra points to pick up some other riders. If we look at just the non-leaders, Ben Healy, Thymen Arensman are the top of the list, but there's a couple other people moving up. Valentin Paripantra, after his win the other day and being active in a few breaks, he's certainly working his way up the list. I'm happy to have him on my team. I picked him up after he won his stage, and I still think he's earning pretty good points. He's earning, as of today, 30 points, jersey points per day, which is the 5th most efficient, considering he's only 9 stars in cost. Also, I think Anthony Turgis is a little bit noteworthy just because he's pretty cheap at 10 stars, and he's earning 18 points in the green jersey competition. And I think that he might have some opportunity in the next 2 days. We'll have to see. If we look at the Global Fantasy League, I'm just short of the top 100, but not bad considering there's over 200,000 teams in the league. So I'm pretty happy with that top 110 for me right now. But if we look at the top players' team, they're looking really strong. They've got a pretty similar team to me with Healy, Pogacar, Vingegaard, Valentin, Paripantra, but their third leader is Onley instead of Lipowitz, which means they're going to save a trade over me because I'm going to be trading from Lipowitz to Onley probably today, which means that they can afford to spend more points in their other riders. And they have one minimum cost rider in Gradek. They also have Bergado, who very easily could be in a break one of the next 2 days or both. and Lenny Martinez. So I don't know that Lenny Martinez is a great hold after today, but at least he's the most expensive of the middle non-leader riders that you might be considering. So he can basically swap Lenny Martinez for any rider in the whole tour that would reasonably be taking up this slot, such as Quinn Simmons, something like that. So they're looking pretty good. If we go over to the Team JFJ Fantasy League, which is just the folks that follow this channel and are participating in the Discord server, you can see I'm 16th in this league. So we've got a lot of really heavy hitters. And I'm happy to report that, if we just look at that number alone, we have 16 people in the top 110 global players. So we've got more than 10% of the top 110 players, which I think is pretty awesome, including G-Dog, who I think just moved up into 7th place globally today. So just taking a quick look at their team. Their team's looking also very similar to that leaders team, except they have Vercher and Grignard instead of Grodek and Bergadeau. So they're also looking pretty good. I'm quite happy with their team. I don't know exactly what they're going to do today, but I would estimate that it's probably going to involve getting rid of Martinez and spreading some points between some of these other riders, maybe upgrading one of these three and downgrading Lenny Martinez at 15 stars to Quinn Simmons at 13 stars. At least that's probably what I would recommend. Note that they also have, I think, 2 stars in reserve, if I'm adding up these numbers correctly. So they have a lot of options. Finally, moving over to my team, I'm still holding on to Castrillo. He did not pan out for me. I took a bet on him. I really thought that when we came into the mountains, he was going to be in a lot of breaks and really active. He just hasn't been there. In fact, he's earned fewer points than Romeo, who's the lesser climber of the two, who I was considering taking in this slot. So I'm a little bit disappointed with this slot. And even though he could be in the break tomorrow, I think that he is my weakest slot and I need to trade him out today. So unfortunately, I only have 1 star in the bank, which means I don't have enough to upgrade him at 11 stars to Quinn Simmons at 13. So that's where options like selling Lipowitz to pick up Onley and free up 2 stars become more appealing. I'm not 100% sure I'm going to make that move, but that's what I'm thinking as of right now. So if we look over at the profile of stages remaining, you can see that we have 1 hilly stage and 1 flat stage. But this is a little bit of a red herring for us. We don't know exactly what's going to happen on this flat stage because it's not exactly flat. But one thing at a time, let's look at stage 20 first. So tomorrow's stage is almost certainly a breakaway. I think that the odds of a breakaway winning are more than 50%. And in fact, if a breakaway doesn't win, it's not even clear whether it will be a group of GC guys sprinting or some versatile sprinters that have made it. Almost certainly it's not going to be a battling day for the GC riders. However, Jonas Vingegaard is still saying in the press that he hasn't lost the tour yet. So if he wants to do anything, this is the last stage that he can really potentially get in a breakaway or move. I don't think that's going to happen. I think that the scenario where Jonas Vingegaard goes ahead is only some crazy scenario where he decides that he wants to go after polka dot points and he's got some agreement with Tade that Tade's not going to just sprint him at the top of each of these climbs. But realistically, that's not going to happen. Most likely, we're going to have a big breakaway. And if we look at the betting odds, we can see that the bookies agree. So people like Quinn Simmons are at the top of the list. I'm not surprised to see him here. He's been super active and hasn't yet won a stage despite him being really strong. In fact, those might be correlated. He's so strong that he's had a bit of a target on his back and he's been really fighting for the breakaways to stay away, which means he's been doing maybe a little bit more work than he needs to. But Quinn Simmons definitely a favorite and someone that I would hope to pick up. If you're looking to pick up one person for tomorrow, I think it should be Quinn Simmons. That's what I'm hoping to do. As much as it pains me to suggest that anyone picks up this guy because he's a racist, but we're not here to make political judgments. We're here to win the fantasy game. So with that in mind, I'm probably going to have him on my team. Wout van Aert is also pretty high in the bookies odds, but I think this is a bit of a trap. I don't 100% see it, and frankly, the problem is he just is too expensive compared to all these other riders that are up and high on this list. He's just so much more expensive. Unless you already have him on your team, in which case probably don't sell him. I wouldn't recommend you pick him up. And one other exception besides having him already in your team is if you need to make a trade for stage 21 anyways, meaning you need to switch from one expensive rider to another for whatever reason, and you can afford to spend 2 trades on that one trade, you can effectively pick up Wout van Aert for tomorrow and then trade him on to your big leader for the next day. But I think most people are not going to be in that scenario, and I'm not even sure it's worthwhile. But if we look at the rest of these names, I mean, there's a couple different categories of riders. There's strong stage hunters. I'm looking at Jonas Abrahamsen, is one of my favorites there. Axel Laurence, Bruno Amarai, Ivan Romeo, Mauro Schmidt, Victor Campenarts, Luke Plapp even. There's a couple in here that I'm maybe not so high on. You know, someone like Thibaut Nice, who hasn't done anything this tour, Magnus Cort, even Julian Alaphilippe. These are riders that this type of stage would be good for someone with their physiological profile. They just haven't been strong enough compared to the others this race. It is possible that some of the best non-GC climbers really make the climbs hard enough tomorrow to make it a climbers day, in which case I'd be looking at the people that have already been climbing well. Ben O'Connor, Timon Aaronsman, Valentin Perripintre. These are the guys that have been most impressive that are not looking at the GC race. Maybe someone like Higuita, I'm not sure. It's also possible, and the bookies seem to agree, that someone like Narvaez or Tim Wellens, the domestiques for Tadej Pogacar on UAE, if they have the freedom to go for their own opportunities tomorrow, then maybe we'll see them in the break. But I don't really expect these guys to be fighting for the win, because I expect the UAE team to be doing as much as they can to keep Tadej Pogacar safe tomorrow. Not that he really needs it, but I wouldn't bet heavily on these two. And of course, there's another category of GC riders here, which are the ones who might be allowed in a tight break, but not a big break. So whereas someone like Ben O'Connor or Aaronsman, they can kind of take as much time as they want. Ben Healy, Kevin Vauquelin, they may be allowed in a small break, because if we look at the standings, which we'll do in a moment here, like who's going to chase them, right? It's unlikely that someone in 11th is going to chase someone in 10th when the gaps are so big. So it's possible that someone like Healy or Vauquelin could have a day tomorrow, but I don't think that's most likely. I think it's more likely to be someone like Quinn Simmons. Then if we look at stage 21, it's not the traditional champagne drinking celebration with a flat finish at the end. You can see we do 3 laps of the circuit that includes Montmartre, which is a 1.1K, 6% cobbled for part of it climb that was used in the Olympics last summer. So this totally changes who's going to be able to win this stage, in my opinion, especially considering the last climb crests at less than 6 kilometers to go. So it's possible we could have a sprint, but most likely it's going to be someone punchy who can make it over those climbs and then still outkick the small reduced group that's going to be there to the finish. So I don't think this is a day for Jonathan Milan, Tim Miller. I could be wrong, but I don't think they're making it over this last hill. So if we pull up PCS and look at the jersey competitions, you can see that the GC is fairly locked up. The time gaps are huge. So you've got Tadej Pogacar in the first, with Jonas the only one anywhere near him in second. He's not going to be able to reel in 4.5 minutes over the next 2 days, but maybe they'll go for gold and try. The next grouping, though, of Florian Lipowitz and Oscar Onley is very close. Florian did take some time today, so it's a little over a minute now, but absolutely some attacks could happen for Onley to try to jump ahead of Florian. I don't think so. I think mostly they're going to be tied to each other tomorrow. Florian's just not going to allow that to happen, but we could see some attempts from Oscar, especially if there's a moment of weakness from Florian. And these two guys are leading the white jersey competition as well. So that's the race right there to look at, Onley versus Lipowitz. Interestingly, as I mentioned earlier, Onley scoring more jersey points each day than Lipowitz because of his standings in the green and polka dot jersey competitions. Past those two, we've got Gall, Johannesson, Vauquelin, and Roglic, and Ben Healy that are sort of in this middle area. But you can see these 5 riders are still spread over 11 minutes. So it's possible that one or two of these guys could get away into a break if if a break's going to take 5 minutes, and one or both of these guys are in it. That might be a way we could see a little bit of shakeup. But I think that more likely, if that happens, it's someone like Kevin Vauquelin that's trying to win the stage tomorrow, more so than Kevin Vauquelin trying to gain 2 minutes on Tobias Johannesson for purposes of moving from 7th to 6th in the yellow jersey competition. Moving on to the green jersey, there's not too much to talk about here because Tadej didn't really go for the win, or at least wasn't able to win the last couple mountain stages. The really exciting, what I think would have been a really exciting and interesting finish to the green jersey competition is sort of petering out. I think the gaps just too big. I don't think it's likely that Pogacar can gain enough points. He would have to win both stages and probably still be fighting for the intermediate sprint tomorrow. So that it's pretty much Jonathan Milan unless he crashes. I will note, however, that Jonas Abrahamsson is still sprinting for these intermediate sprints. So he's quietly moved up himself into seventh place and earning some good points every day. Over in the polka dot jersey competition, mathematically, as of today, the only person that's expressed real interest in the polka dot jersey is out of the running. There's not enough points on offer. He would need 20 more points to even tie with Tadej Pogacar, but I think there's only 18 left maximum for any one rider in the race. So we'll see if Lenny makes a big show of trying to get some points just for the panache, maybe for the super combatif tomorrow, but he's out of the running. He's not going to win it unless one or both of these guys crash out. As I mentioned, Jonas could potentially take the win. He does have the mathematical possibility, but he'd have to be allowed to go ahead of the race either without Pogacar or with Pogacar not sprinting him on the line, and I just don't see either of those scenarios happening. Back over to the white jersey competition, not too much to talk about here, except I just want to add that I do think Lipowitz is clearly the stronger big mountain climber. He did lose time yesterday to Onley, but I don't think that was because he was the weaker rider. I think that was race dynamics. And we saw again today that he was stronger than Onley. So if you think back to the first week, however, Onley was actually stronger than Lipowitz. Onley was one of the best riders in the race in those punchy hills in the first week. And it's frankly a surprise that he still held on. It's a really excellent Tour de France for him. But I do expect him to be very good on the terrain in these last 2 days, if and when the GC guys are allowed to, fight up the hills. So the big moves. What do we do here? What do we do with our fantasy team? Now's the time to spend. Spend your credit, spend your trades. I've been saying for the last 2.5 weeks, save your trades. Now's the time. And normally I think it's important to save 2 trades for the very last day. And I say normally because for the last, 6 years or however many years this game has been up, there's usually been a time trial on the last or second to last stage, or some big mountain stage on the second to last stage where we expect the GC battle to continue. But right now, I think the GC battle is pretty much done. So I think we know who's going to be gaining what yellow jersey points on the last stage. And so we can start to do math. And so today might be a good day for you to spend your remaining trades. And in fact, I'm probably going to do that myself. So if you're lucky to have 3 or more trades, there I think you can afford to maybe make an intermediary trade, like spend 2 trades today to pick up a rider that you expect to be in the break tomorrow and then trade them out for some other big rider for the following day. But most of us are going to have 2 or fewer trades. Most of us are not going to have a team that's the perfect composition that we want going into Paris. So most of us are going to spend our remaining trades today. And I think that's okay to do. If someone crashes tomorrow, that's unfortunate, but it's a risk that I think is worth taking. You don't want to finish the tour with an extra trade that you didn't need to spend. And just be wary of any trades you'd like to do after today that are actually going to require 2 trades to make them happen because you don't have enough stars. So don't get yourself in that position where you save yourself a trade, but you're not able to effectively use it because you'd need to trade up on a rider and you don't have any stars in reserve. So I fortunately have 1 star in reserve. I unfortunately do not have 2 stars in reserve because if I did, I'd trade up Castrillo for Simmons, but I don't. So most likely what I'm going to do is sell Lipowitz, pick up Onley, and pump those extra stars into upgrading Castrillo to Simmons. And I'm happy holding Valentin Perepintre for his potential tomorrow and also for his jersey points he's earning. And I'm happy holding Abrahamsson because I think he could be in the break both of the next 2 days potentially. I don't think now is a good time to pick up a big sprinter like Milan or Merlier. I'm not even sure that they're going to be sprinting on the Champs-Élysées. Maybe we'll get some better intel from interviews over the course of the next 24 hours for us to decide if it's worth picking up one of these guys for stage 21. But certainly I would not do it tomorrow because there's no chance tomorrow. So you can delay that decision. If you have the luxury to be able to spend stars and credits picking up one of those sprinters for stage 21, you can make that decision tomorrow after we have more data. Also, remember the Super Combatif Award. This is an award that will grant 90 points for the last stage. It's sort of equivalent to those 30 points you get daily for the most combative rider multiplied by 3. But just remember in the rules, they list it as 90 points for Super Combatif. They don't list it as 30, but then they explicitly note that the bonus does not apply to the Super Combatif Award. You can see that here. Bonus points mentioned above will be multiplied by 3 for stage 21, except for the super combative rider, because it's already effectively multiplied by 3 up to 90. But 90 points over the next 2 days, if you're trying to do some math, if you feel pretty confident that you know who's going to win that, you can divide that by 4 to roughly estimate how many jersey points that should count towards. So if you're looking at the jersey points that someone's earning, let's say you think Ben Healy's going to win the super combatif, you can add 22 and a half points to 48 to get 70 points, because that 90 points divided over 4 days gets you about 70 points. The reason I'm dividing over 4 days is because we effectively have 4 days left of jersey points to earn, 1 day tomorrow and 3 days on Sunday. As for the riders who are most likely to win the super combatif, it could go a number of different ways. Ben Healy is an obvious candidate. He was super active the whole tour. He's been doing a lot better than everyone expected him to do in the high mountains, even after his earlier attacks. Of course, we can't forget Lenny Martinez, who was the only person who really fought for polka dots on this tour, and he established that as his intention from day one. The fact that he's French also factors into this a little bit. The French tend to get a little bit of a bonus when being considered for the super combatif. Quinn Simmons, of course, has been super combative and super active. He's been not just in the press, but on the road as well. He's been expressing his intention and then following up on those intentions to get into as many breaks as he can, but then also doing really good work for his sprinter on the front of the peloton. He's just been one of the most visible riders of the whole tour. So he's definitely in consideration. I also think Jonas Abrahamsson should be in consideration. He's made some heroic attempts at the break, including ones that were doomed to fail. And when he's been in the break, he's attacked off the front of the break, and he's been the last strongman in those breaks. He hasn't been able to keep up on the climbs, but that's expected. So he's another person in the running. Of course, though, one thing that always happens is that people get short-term memory loss and they only seem to remember what's happened in the last couple of days. And in the last couple of days, Kevin Vauquelin has absolutely been the most combative. He's won 2 stages. Today, he was attacking Tadej and Jonas over and over and over until it stuck. So that takes a lot of panache, and I think that he'll get a lot of votes off of his performance in the last few days. Hey, sorry to interrupt. Editing Joe here. In case it wasn't obvious, I was talking about Timon Ahrensman, not Kevin Vauquelin. I was pausing a little bit because I was confused why I had a French rider selected on the screen. Just a mistake. Timon Ahrensman, not Kevin Vauquelin. Also Jordan Jagat, you could mention, he did actually win the most combative of the second week, but I didn't really understand that to begin with, so I don't think that he's likely to win overall. Also noting Matthew Van der Poel was the most combative of the first week, but he's no longer in the race, so he can't win it. So in any case, I think that these are the guys to be looking at for the most combative: Ben Healy, Kevin Vauquelin, Lenny Martinez, Quinn Simmons, or Jonas Abrahamsson. And with that, I think I'm going to close it out. I don't think I'll have a video tomorrow unless something crazy happens. So take this as my advice for the next 2 days. If you've got any riders that you think are looking really good that I haven't mentioned, please leave a comment below or join the discussion over on the Discord. If you think that I'm wrong about stage 21 and it's going to be a flat sprint, also let me know that and let me know why you think that. Good luck to everyone wrapping up this year's tour. I'll certainly at least do a video after the end of the tour. So I'll see you then. Take care.